Welcome to Better PR. Wherever you are in your PR journey, you'll love exploring the stories from your peers about the many faces of public relations. Better PR is brought to you by In Plain Sight Marketing, a public relations and marketing agency in Carson City, Nevada, Renown Regional Medical Center in Reno, and the Sierra Nevada chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. I'm your host, Kathy Taylor. I'm your host, Kathy Taylor, APR, and this morning I am so excited to have Mark Mohammadpour, APR. He is the owner and chief wellness officer for Chasing the Sun. Mark, you are so many things. You're an award-winning PR executive who served on the PRSA Oregon chapter board, including as the president. You received the Oregon PRSA's Olga M. Haley Mentorship Award in 2020. And you also write the workplace wellness column for PRSA's Strategies and Tactics. But along with that, you are also a certified personal trainer, certified health coach, nutrition certified coach. You are an inspired keynote speaker, and you deliver wellness programming to individuals, teams, and enterprise organizations. Good morning, Mark, and thank you for joining us.
Kathy, it's an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this because we've done a little bit of focusing inward on the career in PR, as you mentioned in one of your talks, and that I've seen articles talking about the fact that PR is one of the more stressful careers that you can be in. And I'm just really excited to hear your take on your personal journey and how you got to this point of delivering these kinds of discussions to PR professionals.
Thank you, Kathy. This has become my purpose, and it's an honor to play a role in the well-being of the PR professional. And just really happy to chat with you about it today.
So tell us, how did it start for you?
So I started my PR career at Weber Shandwick, which is a global PR firm. I started right out of college, and as I was working my way up the ladder and getting promoted and taking on more responsibilities, there were a number of different life milestones. I was starting to date my now wife, Christine. I bought a house and was getting promoted, and I was learning how to be an adult. And I think as I was doing that, I was focusing on my work. I was not focusing on my mental health and my physical health. And I got to a point in 2007 that I was 350 pounds. And on the scale, it's hard enough to look at, but it was really what I was feeling and what I was experiencing that was the real issue. I had sleep apnea. I was breaking chairs in restaurants. Trying to walk up a flight of stairs was difficult. Flying in coach from Portland, Oregon, where I live, to New York or San Francisco or wherever to staff a press tour for my clients was physically and mentally difficult. And I knew I needed to make a change because I was really worried I was going down a path. When you're 350 pounds, it impacts your life in so many different ways. And I wasn't who I was. I wasn't a positive, upbeat person that I normally am. And I needed to make a change. And that's when I proposed to my now wife, Christine, in December 2007. And I started making some small but impactful changes to my diet and exercise. And by the time we got married 9 months later, I was down to 240. I had lost 110 pounds naturally. And I've managed to keep that off ever since. And so fast forward 10 years, a number of changes professionally had happened. I had moved from Weber Shandwick to Edelman, another global PR firm with offices here in Portland. And I was starting to get very involved in PRSA over those 10 years. I got my APR. I was honored to serve as PRSA Oregon chapter president. And I was starting to think about my career, and I was starting to think about where my next phase of my professional life was headed. And I was really thinking about the well-being of the PR professional. This was before COVID. This was before lockdown. I knew that our profession is one of the most stressful professions out there. And there are a lot of good intentions on how to identify things to be able to conduct work-life balance and prioritizing the well-being of the professional. But I saw an opportunity to really lean in on this and think about things like burnout, think about employee retention, think about all these factors that I was experiencing as I was starting to run teams throughout the last 10, 12 years of my career and taking pride in keeping stable account teams there, because the more turnover that you have, especially on the agency side, the more you run at risk for your clients to fire you. And so I started to take a lot of pride in that. And I was starting to couple that with my weight loss journey, my relationship with PRSA. I got certified to be a personal trainer and health coach and nutrition coach, as you mentioned a few minutes ago. And that became part of the opportunity to launch Chasing the Sun, which I did in 2019. And what had started as primarily individual and group coaching for individuals has evolved to a much broader enterprise level employee well-being program, where I am working with individuals, teams, and full organizations to prioritize their well-being. And that's my mission, to empower people to prioritize their well-being so they can shine in the family room and the boardroom. And that's where we're at today.
So how does it work? How do people join into your programs in their workplace?
So this has been a fascinating journey over the last few years, as I've done a lot of listening and understanding what is impacting employers right now. And I think over the last couple of years and going forward, there's been this huge mental health issue and so many different factors, right? Whether it's dealing with the pandemic or other factors. I think from a workplace standpoint, we have seen a number of topics rise to the top, and one of those is just really being understanding about the challenges that parents have had, and understanding the challenges that parents have always had, but are continue to have, especially during the pandemic. They're having to raise children who are themselves are trying to figure out how to be humans and be able to learn from home and constantly navigate different mask mandates and other challenges that that parents have had to deal with. Parents are also children of their parents. And so I think that's a topic that we've had to really address and look at. And part of that, Kathy, is understanding this idea that we are not working 9 to 5. This has always been a factor in our profession, but it's really come at the forefront. And what that means is that organizations need to look at how we are working day in, day out. And there needs to be some transparency and discussions across the organization to be able to say, this is how we're going to be working day in and day out together. And at a tactical level, that means identifying what our core hours are. It talks about whether we're working on nights and weekends and what those expectations are across our enterprise, but even more so with our immediate teams. And how much time we're spending on video. A lot of data says that the more we're on video, the more stress and anxiety increases. And so what I do is I work with companies and be able to analyze how they are working together and identify ways in which we can streamline communications, that we can minimize meetings, that we can maximize the channels that we are using, all with the intent, Kathy, to help reduce stress and anxiety, give some time back to the employees, and ultimately allow them to do what they need to do in their lives in their own time, while still helping to meet the business objectives of the organization. And what I do as far as services are concerned are various workshops on a number of topics, whether that's leading with empathy, toxic positivity, what your team charter looks like, what are those unwritten rules, how to design a wellness accountability plan that I'll talk about in a few minutes, talk about the steps that I took to prioritize my well-being, one-on-one coaching, consulting, working with HR teams on how to communicate all those great benefits that already exist, but perhaps employees don't really know about. I can play a role, and I play a role in working with companies on doing that, and a number of other things that it's been a fun journey over the last few years to be able to work with organizations on.
I love that. I'm kind of grinning over here because, we went through that. We're a small agency ourselves, but my daughter has 3 young children and she's my business partner. And there were times when her youngest, who was 3 at the time, would stage protests. And that call, and that call. And, you've got people who are parents and who understand what they're going through. And then you have people who have never been parents and don't understand what this is. And it created that situation where sometimes we just have to go off camera. Sometimes we just don't need to look at each other in the faces because we know that we're there. We know we're together. We're talking about things. We're collaborating. We're having a great time. I really love that thing about going off camera.
It's significant. And I think, Kathy, this has been a huge topic that I really try to double down and triple down on, because it's key in so many facets. Before the pandemic, a lot of companies were obviously in physical offices. And I know in our profession, a lot was virtual, a lot was remote, but there was also a lot of demand and requests to have people in the office. And I don't want to go down a road necessarily that is negative, but I know a lot of that comes down to power, and it comes down to the perceived optics of being in a place and what that means, and showing up for leadership and all that. And we've had to rewrite those rules for health benefits, for literal survival. And now we've realized, oh my gosh, we have the technology, which we've always had for the last 10, 12 years, by the way. But now it's been expedited to be able to say, okay, we can work and operate in a different way. And part of that is we've been able to see and literally look in our lives. I mean, you and I are having a video conversation from our respective home offices, right? And this is what we've done, and it's very vulnerable. Kathy, this is the other big thing that I think we learned during the pandemic, is really increasing our sense of empathy, and understanding that we need empathy and understanding in order to work together, because we're being very vulnerable in opening our houses to our colleagues, our directs, our bosses, our clients, our partners. And I don't know how much we've had a chance to really process that. We sort of had to do it because we did it, but saying, oh my gosh, we've really changed how we operate. And that takes a sense of empathy. And the more empathic that we can be, the better our mental health is. And I think ultimately the better that we feel as a collective.
And it's challenging long-held beliefs, I think, especially with, when we talk about generations in the workplace, especially with the difference in generations. There are things I came up with in the corporate world in my generation that, are completely different than they are today. And I can remember sitting there watching the nightly news. It was Lisa Desjardins from NPR. And we're watching her through the pandemic, and she's got her cat. Her cat is always on the couch behind her, usually sleeping, sometimes playing, sometimes, licking his paws. And when she went back to the studio, my husband turned to me and said, I miss the cat. It just challenges how we think about life and professionalism.
Absolutely. We've become more human to each other. We've reduced that. We've dropped that shield in some way, shape, or form. And again, that's difficult. That's a sense of vulnerability, but it's also a sense of leadership. I think that's one of the other big lessons that we've learned, is that leaders have shown more vulnerability over the last couple of years than I can remember in another time. And we've had to in so many ways and means. And being vulnerable is a sign of leadership. It's showing that we're human. And as leaders, as business leaders, as we all are, as your listeners are, as those in the public relations industry are, we're business leaders, we're trusted advisors. And part of that is showing that we're vulnerable, that we don't have all the answers. And we don't always have the best answers and the best approaches to things. And the more that we can do that, the more human that we can, the more that we can build trust and rapport, which to me ultimately helps with the relationships with our publics, and with the intent to make sure that our mental, physical, emotional well-being is better as a result.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we are being vulnerable, and there's that feeling of connection. And in PR, we are storytellers, right? We tell gritty, raw, real stories, and we find ourselves in the middle of them. We can't hide anymore. We're a story in ourselves when we're sitting, like you said, in our homes, with the dog barking or the toddler wandering in. I mean, it's just, it's kind of the great equalizer, and it humanizes, I think, a lot of things.
It absolutely does. And I think we've learned so much. And part of it, and kind of coming back to the well-being discussion, is how are we as a group, as a profession, as organizations, as individuals, how are we ensuring that we are prioritizing our well-being, and how do we feel empowered to do so by our clients, by our colleagues, by our bosses? And a lot of that comes down to communication. It's really like breaking down those barriers. I hate to use cliche, but it is being able to be overly communicative as far as what priorities are going on day in and day out, what's important, what's not, why do these meetings need to be scheduled, does it need to be on video, all these factors, to be able to take a step back and say, if we're giving this assignment to somebody, what do they have to take off their plate in order to do so? Or does that employee not know, and they're having to stay up until 3 a.m. to get everything done because they thought they had to get everything done because they didn't ask, they didn't manage up, the manager didn't ask. And these are the things that, to me, Kathy, is the next step beyond kind of traditional wellness programs, right? There's lots of step challenges in water drinking, and I'm not saying that's not important, and also all the great benefits that HR works so smart and hard to be able to provide to their employees. But it is a conversation, an ongoing conversation that ultimately helps ensure that the employee knows what's expected of them, and the employer is in making sure that they're doing everything that they can to set them up for success. And it's amazing what a short email, what a short Slack message, what a short phone call can do to impact the next 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours of what that employee is doing. And that has a ripple effect overall. And those are the conversations that I want to be able to facilitate.
Yeah, I agree with you. That the over conversating, is that a word? Over conversation. Oh my gosh, over communication piece. Whew. I am a professional communicator. I think that's really key. And it brings me to one of the topics that you mentioned earlier was the warning signs of burnout, because I think that we get in this, I've got to be on camera, I've got to be at my desk at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whatever time you've agreed upon to start. How do we work around those things? Because I think that, personally speaking, to me, that feeling of I must be at my desk from 8 to 5 is really, that's a tough one. And I can feel myself sometimes going, no, I really don't want to.
Yeah. So I'll share some tips that I have pulled together over the years as I thought about my weight loss journey. Now the caveat is that the examples I share are primarily as it relates to weight loss. Not everybody has that challenge, right? But this is about how do we prioritize our own well-being in the way that works for us. And so one of the first questions that I ask people is, what's an experience that you want to have as a result of improving your well-being? For me, it was, I wanted to not break chairs in restaurants. I wanted to not have sleep apnea. I wanted to sit comfortably as well as I could, at least on a coach seat. Today, the experience is I need to show up with confidence for my clients and my workshop attendees and my family. We're hosting this podcast right now, and I stand up for all of my workshops and all of my meetings that I have because it makes me feel more confident. I have to have my shoulders back, my chest out, and it takes a sense of confidence in order to have that. So I talk about in terms of what do people want to experience. And again, this isn't about quantifying a certain like weight gain or muscle gain or anything or weight loss or heart rate variability change or anything like that. It's like, really, what is it that you want to experience, right? So that's the first part. The second is, as we talk about with our PR friends and we talk about goals and objectives and strategies and tactics, oftentimes, Kathy, when we think about our well-being, we try to put quantifiable, measurable objectives around that. Sometimes we talk to our doctor and they say, okay, you need to lose a certain amount of weight, or you need to reduce your cholesterol or increase this. And we want to be able to do that in a certain amount of time. And I think that's great. And I think there's room for that. But what I want to do is I want to get down to the tactics as a kid to what we do in PR, whether that's the press release, the tweet, the newsletter. Those are things that are 100% within our control. And I challenge my workshop attendees and my clients to think about what's in their control as it relates to their well-being. And that is everything from drinking 8 glasses of water to shifting 3 of your meetings per week from video to walk and talk meetings. That's a tactic that will help prioritize your well-being. So that's the second part. The third part is around prioritization. It's around time. And it's this mindset shift that, yes, even though we are in the service industry as PR professionals, we have to be in more of our control of our calendar than we perceive it to be. This is a big mindset shift. This is a big change when we want to be available for our clients. We want to be available for our colleagues, our bosses. That means, especially in the pandemic and beyond, that we wake up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., or we're immediately on our phone and we're immediately starting to work. And before we know it, it's 11 o'clock or noon and we forgot breakfast. And okay, my gosh, we have a lunch meeting. We're going to forget lunch. And it's going to be 5 or 6 o'clock and we're exhausted. And that's when we make poor eating decisions, just as one example. So I really want to push people to say, okay, we want to have this experience, Kathy. We want to have this tactic that we want to prioritize. Then it's how we're going to do it. And that's really around blocking time. It's around reminders on our phones. It's around accountability. Whatever works for you, it's to be able to say, how are we actually going to do it? And then the fourth is around our backup plan. As PR professionals, we always write crisis plans for our clients and our teams when in preparation for when things go wrong. So if Kathy is just making this up, you want to go to yoga class on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 5 p.m. and you need to log off at 4:30 to change clothes, travel to the venue, get ready, all that stuff. And you have that set, you have it blocked out in your calendar. Everybody knows that you're going to be offline. But then let's say at 4:25 p.m., just a few minutes before you have to log off, something happens, right? You get a text or a phone call or an email. Maybe the class is canceled. Maybe a client has a last minute call. Something personal came up. What's your backup plan? And sometimes that's to give ourselves grace. Sometimes it's saying, I'm going to schedule the next yoga class. Whatever that is, I want us to have that written down and cemented so that we know what happens in case of emergency. So it's what we experience. It's the tactic, what's in our control, how we're going to make time for it, and then what's the backup plan when things don't go our way. And so that's the story that I work with people to help define for them. And it's incredibly personal. Some it's related to physical health. Some it's related to emotional. Some it's related to financial. That's another big factor. And how we're going to do that. But this approach, it's been an honor to be able to deliver this over the last few years. It's what's worked for me, and it's what worked for countless others since launching Chasing the Sun.
I love that. And you have some a 3-part wellness series with PRSA coming up. So our PRSA members can access these workshops, correct?
Correct. Yeah. PRSA and PRSSA, actually. And that'll be coming up.
You want to tell us about your workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's starting in August 2022. So it's a 3-part series. The first part is going to be audio only. And we're going to be talking about shifting our mindset around meetings. And I'll be sharing some data around, the impact of video meetings and back-to-back video meetings and what we can do to start doing some audio only sessions. We're going to share some technology and some best practices on how to make some shifts there, because I think the more that we can be physically active, the less that we can be on video all the time, the better it is for all of us. The second part is going to be on talent recruitment and well-being. And so we're going to talk about the needs for organizations to be able to talk about employee well-being as it relates to the talent recruitment process and everything from onboarding. And I'm not just talking about benefits. I'm talking about what's the working relationship going to be like with your bosses, with your teams, what to expect, how do we break down what those expectations are around meetings, taking breaks, taking vacation, all those expectations, so that when the employee starts the job, they have a really good sense of what to experience, how we can mitigate some of those unwritten rules. I really don't like unwritten rules. How can we bubble that up to the forefront? And a lot of that kind of stems from the talent recruitment process, everything from the website, the job descriptions, how the recruiter engages with the employee, what questions the employee should be asking as far as that's concerned, all to be able to help minimize as much stress and anxiety as possible throughout their employee experience. with the organization. So that's the second part. And then the third part to close out is going to be around toxic positivity. And the idea that that's good vibes only, or look on the bright side of life, everything's okay, you should be grateful for what you have. There's a lot of good intentions with those messages, but they can actually have a negative impact on mental health. So we're going to talk about some data around that. We're going to share some key elements to be able to identify that, and then how to overcome some of those challenges. So this series is really all about helping to redefine well-being in the PR profession, and some examples of relatable, practical, and actionable tips that attendees can take away. And so it's wonderful that PRSA is dedicating a 3-part series to this. I love that it had the June, July issue of Strategies and Tactics dedicated to health and wellness, and because it's important. It's always been important, and it always will be. And it's an honor to play a role. So that's coming soon in August.
I love that this is available to students too in PRSSA, because I think you get out of college and you get your job and you go, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to ask. I think that's great.
It's critical. And this is something that I talk to college students and new professionals about a lot. I'll be, there's a new pro summit with PRSA coming up in September. I'll be talking about the new professional soft skills guide, which I'll be reiterating some of this stuff, but it is around how do you feel empowered to manage up and ask smart questions around that? Because I think organizations are more and more seeing the need to ensure that new professionals don't burn out, that they're set up for success. And I want to be able to have discussions around that, because as great as career centers are and professors are and mentors are at the university level, I think there's always opportunities to share more information and help and help set them up for success. And so yes, I agree with you. It's great that PRSSA will be part of that.
I remember, gosh, it was probably 10, 12 years ago. I was working for a giant corporation, Fortune 10 company, and they were talking about, and there were a lot of studies that were being lobbed about soft skills, and that universities were starting to teach soft skills courses because we weren't seeing graduates coming out with those things. So I think it's really a key part, going back to empathy and being empathetic to your coworkers. What's your tip for maybe taking a look at how you talk with others and how you come across to others, and how you can find that empathy within yourself if you're a hard-driven, go career kind of person?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, I host whole separate workshops on that. In fact, I'm honored. I'll be at the international conference in Dallas in November talking about leading with empathy. I'll be using lessons from the Ted Lasso show about that. I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan, and there's so many lessons from that show around leadership. And the reality is I think there's a misperception that you're either born with empathic capabilities or you're not. And studies have shown that you can actually increase your levels of empathy by up to 50%. Well, how do we do that? One is really experiencing the perspectives of others. And one way to do that is to experience the arts, is to be able to go to an art gallery, or it's be able to create art yourself, because you're actually trying to really look at the mindset of not only yourself, but also as you're viewing art, look at the perceptions of others. Songs, right? Reading lyrics, reading fiction stories, especially ones that are really heavily character driven, to be able to say, okay, this is the perspectives of others as well. And I think the more that we can do that and be able to install that, not only as individuals, but also I'm talking to companies and managers as they think about offsites, as they think about social activities. What are those ways in which we can identify opportunities to grow our empathic capacities, because it's something that we're always going to need going forward. And so this is something that I try to chat with college students and new professionals, as well as trying to look at the mindset of your manager, of your client, what they're dealing with day in and day out, because they may not be prioritizing responding to on that email, or getting back on that proposal, or getting back to you on that that media pitch. If you're working with reporters are people too, right? Like they have lives. And so that's a big part of that as well, is helping make sure that we're educating them on examples in which why, they might be slow to respond. It might not be personal. Don't take it personal. And I think that's a big learning over the last few years as we've had to manage through the pandemic and beyond.
Absolutely. Mark, I'm so thrilled that you joined me this morning. I want to encourage our PRSA and PRSSA friends to go on to the prsa.org website, look for these events coming up and sign up, because I think it's a hugely relevant topic to us. And as we're still, and to use cliche like you mentioned, we are still in times that we don't know and we don't understand. And we're trying to find our way through it. It's our current normal, I guess you could say. So I encourage everyone to sign up for Mark's sessions coming up. And if you're going to Icon, please, please, please hit Mark's session at Icon.
Thank
Mark,
you.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to make sure people know how to get in touch with you, what your website is, so they can see where you are.
Yeah, so you can reach me at chasingthesunpdx.com. You can email me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at chasingthesunpdx.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn and on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mark Mo, M-A-R-K, M-O-H.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Kathy.
Better PR is brought to you by In Plain Sight Marketing, a public relations and marketing agency in Carson City, Nevada, Renown Regional Medical Center in Reno, and the Sierra Nevada chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. I'm your host, Kathy Taylor.